science in general. And I hope maybe after Fernando's amazing talk that I don't have to convince you that web technology is amazing for reproducible research and for teaching people and bringing an interface to algorithms that are otherwise really complex. So after Fernando's talk, I got really inspired and I decided that we needed a Jupyter plugin for neuroimaging data. So the past 24 hours I've spent just working with Chris and Nate on interactive Nifty viewer. So that was awesome. But another reason I really like web technology is for sharing interactive data visualization. So we're all collecting really large data sets, and it's really hard to think about the relationships between all these different features that we can extract from images. And so creating interactive data visualizations is great, but then sharing them is even more important. So one of my first experiences with JavaScript was building a viewer for this application called MindBoggle. And MindBoggle is a morphometry toolbox that combines ants and FreeSurfer and extracts shape measures from the cortical surface. So in this example here, we're seeing an interactive 3D brain with the different labels, and you can highlight over a different label, and then you can look at a box plot of distributions of different features that we can extract from these labels. And so why is this important? Well, normally the workflow is you run your segmentation algorithm or whatever, and you extract features from different labels, and then maybe you put it in a pandas data frame, and then you'll create maybe scatter plots. But then you've lost the initial thing you were looking at, which was very rich scientific data. So we call things like this scientific data visualization, and this is called information visualization, which is a little bit more abstract. And linking them together, I feel, is really important for our intuition, for learning about our data sets. So a more extreme example and more developed example is for this toolbox called AFQ, which stands for Automatic Fiber Quantification. And it's a toolbox that takes diffusion imaging data and extracts various tracts. And then it can extract various features along these tracts. And that's what you're seeing here in this bundled details panel. So what you're seeing is a bunch of subjects and their individual tract profiles. And the y-axis here is radial diffusivity, but you can change it to something like FA. And in theory, the plot should change. There we go, cool. And so this link is a lot more interesting because we have our scientific data visualization here, and you can change this window, move around this brain. You can select different tracks that you're interested in. And when you click, you can see the tract profile for this particular tract. Another thing you can look at is a table of all the subjects that went into this visualization, and you can pick out specific subjects. So if you want to look at subject, this 28-year-old subject 3, when you click on this, you can see that their tract profile is, oh, that's subject 65. Why is that? Here we go. Okay, subject 3 is a slightly darker tract here, and you can actually highlight part of this tract, and you can see that at node 59, this subject has an FA that's almost 2 standard deviations above the mean. And so something like this is really important because you're looking at group statistics, but you're also looking at, you can inspect each individual subject. Another really cool thing you can do is brush the tracts. So now we want to understand why this particular subject, what this part of the tract profile corresponds to, and you can actually look at the blue here, and as I move around, you can see that the tracts, the spot that I'm looking at is changing. So let me just do that here as well. So here along the arcuate, you can brush along this information visualization and look at our scientific data visualization. You can have this really powerful link. Another cool thing that you can do is that once you run AFQ, it's one line on your command line to build this visualization and upload it to GitHub and share it with your friends. And another thing is that you can launch Binder from this, and this will create a Binder instance that has all the data loaded, it has scikit-learn, and you can use Jupyter to interact with the data that goes behind this visualization. Another thing that I use web technology for is collaboration. So the Child Mind Institute is releasing this really large data set on pediatric mental health. And it's going to include 10,000 MRI scans of children. And for those of you who scan children, maybe you know that they move a lot, and a 5-minute structural sequence is a lot to ask of some children. So the data quality varies quite a lot. And I was thinking, 10,000 MRI scans. I personally am not going to look through all of that and quality control it. But this is an open data set, and maybe if we all work together, we can get good quality scores on this data. So I created this website called mindcontrol-hbn.herokuapp.com. And you have to sign a consent form because the University of Washington requires me to do this. There's some instructions. So basically, you can load an image, give me your opinion. Do you think it passes or fails? And you can tell me your confidence. And we have a few guidelines, but generally what we're looking for is motion. The app is a little bit broken right now. Normally you would see a distribution here of age, but as an example, I will click this, and we have a 3D image loading, hopefully. Oh, cool, okay. All right, so we have this interactive 3D image. You can actually annotate it, so you can shift, or let me log in, sorry. Consent, sign in. So if you log in, you can, oh, that was a mistake. You can log a point, and you can say there's a mistake here. So you can imagine something like this would be really useful for maybe free surfer control points. And so we did this, and we have a leaderboard right here. So I did 616 brain annotations, essentially, and this person, Dave Kennedy, did 411. Amanda, is Amanda here? Oh, yay, yeah, Amanda's third place. So I found out that making a simple leaderboard really got people, into the idea of this collaborative, crowdsourced quality control. And this app took me quite a while to build. I put a lot of thought into it, and then of course someone had to complain, and they were like, Anisha, this is great and all, but I really want this to work on my phone, because I don't want to do this, all the time. I want to do this while I'm waiting for the bus. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, how annoying. But then I thought about it, and maybe if we made these apps more accessible, people would just do it all the time, and we could actually hook more people into this idea of collaboration. And so maybe we could do mass collaboration. So one weekend, because I have no life, I made a Tinder app for brains. So now instead of looking at the 3D volume and making your decision, you get to make a split-second decision on a brain image, just like you would if you were using Tinder. And I tweeted it to my tens of followers because I did not understand the power of social media. So I said, are you at work but feel like playing Tinder? Why not play Brainer instead and help neuroscientists rate the quality of brain images? Swipe left to fail bad quality images. And I didn't think that much of it, but then it got 625 likes and 414 retweets, and I'm very proud of this one tweet. So to show you this app, if you go to brainer.us, you can see our landing page. You can hit play, and this works quite nicely on your phone. You can actually swipe right or left for a good or bad image. So in this case, I will swipe right. I spent a lot of time on this animation because it was kind of initially written as a joke, and I felt like I really had to commit to a good joke. But this got weirdly popular, and in fact, there's some stranger out there who I don't know that did 6,000 swipes in one night. Which was incredible, but actually we have 400 and something users, and we have over 100,000 swipes. So by changing the interface a little bit, making it actually simpler and mobile compatible, we were able to collect a lot more data and get a lot more collaboration for this project. And so, of course, we had to go a little bit further because now you can take that code, it's all open source, and we created Brainderless, and this is a collaboration with a professor at USC who's working on stroke data. So she has a bunch of lots of stroke data, and she's running various stroke segmentation algorithms. She has to decide which is the best algorithm to use. So when you play Brainderless, we've changed it up a little, and now you see not only the brain slice, but a red outline of what we think is probably a stroke lesion, and then again, you swipe right or left if you think it's good. I think that's okay. And so we have a leaderboard for this as well, and some person who we don't know did 2,001 swipes on 100 images, so they just kept playing even though they didn't need to. Another thing that we did was I gamified this because so Tinder's really popular, but also Pokemon Go, right? Like people like winning badges. So I have some like badges you can win, and you can unlock different levels. Then I took this concept a little bit further with whaler, because the Department of Oceanography really liked Brander and they wanted something for their research. So whaler is a little bit different. There is a instrument recording ocean sounds maybe 100 miles off the coast of Seattle, and occasionally you can hear whales, but we don't know when the whales come, and this would be really useful for marine biologists because then they can start looking at different whale noises and maybe they're talking to each other. Lots of cool research, I'm sure, but we need a good training data set to build an algorithm that can detect whale noises. So in whaler you hear, I don't know if this works with sound, but we show a spectrogram, but if you click on this picture, it should play a whale sound. I also added a thing called whale chats because I don't know anything about whales and I needed a way to communicate with these cytologists, which is what you call someone who studies whales. And so we can look down and we have some people like discussing all the different whale noises. Maybe these are humpback calls. Okay, so if I click this, will it play? Oh, you can't hear. Anyway, it would be cool if you could hear. There's a whale here. It's very exciting. And so if another thing that I really like the idea of is, can we have interactive figures in our papers? So the Brander analysis preprint is up on results.brander.us, and figure 4 is this interactive figure, which is again linking scientific data visualization at the bottom with information visualization here. And this is an interesting figure because I call it my p-hacking figure, because you can select different subjects by their data quality, and then it reruns the statistical model. And you can see that your p-value is low if you care about that, but that you can keep hacking away and exploring your data in different ways. But this is all part of a paper. So yeah, that's cool. Another app that I'm working on is called MetaCurious, and this is a collaboration with JB and 2 awesome Berkeley undergraduates. And in this app, we want to annotate PDFs, because as we all know, PDFs are like the worst way to present your results, and we need to extract useful metadata from them. So you can search for a topic, you can open a paper, and you can see the PDF on one side, hopefully. Cool. You can scroll down to the coordinate table that you want to annotate, and then you can do a side-by-side annotation of effect sizes in this example. But we're also adding kind of more generalized annotation tools where you can just say any key value pair. So if I want to annotate scanner strength, I can do that. And then similar to mind control, I thought, well, maybe this is asking too much of people. This is too much work. So the phone game version of this is called Abstract. So now you can annotate just one little thing, which is the sample size from an abstract. And so a little bit of NLP using JavaScript highlights all the numbers. And you can click, there's 17 children in this study, and you can submit a cute animation. But again, there's a leaderboard, and some stranger has beaten me again at my own game. So which is to say that I think the web is really powerful for bringing people together and collaborating, and you can do lots of really weird stuff with it. So I want to start talking about how would you actually start doing this. So I want to start with a few mental models. The first has to do with how the web works, and Fernando talked about this briefly, but I just want to review that there's a server out there. It might be written in Python, JavaScript, Ruby, PHP, and it's listening for requests from clients. So maybe your client is your laptop right now. It could be your cell phone. It could even be your smart fridge, because I just discovered that people are making fridges with web browsers in them, which means you can do science on your fridge while you're eating, which is cool. So the client, which is maybe your laptop, sends a request, and this request could have data like your username and password. It could have files that you're uploading to OpenNeuro. And then the server does something and it sends a response. And this could be data. It could be HTML. It could be a PDF, binary data. And so to look a little bit closer at the HTML, it's not just content. So when we think of HTML, we think of content. But it actually has style, which we call CSS, and it has JavaScript, which basically encodes interactions. How many of you have written HTML? A little bit. How many of you have written CSS? Okay, it's kind of the worst in my opinion, and JavaScript, any? Cool, more than last year, it's awesome. So the model here is that HTML generally defines the content of a page, JavaScript defines the interaction, which means that JavaScript can change the content of the HTML. CSS refers to the style, so it styles the look of your content, but JavaScript can also change the style. And then finally, I want to zoom in on our client here, which could be your smart fridge or your iPhone or your laptop. So it receives some data in HTML, say. And what the web browser does is it takes this text, basically, and creates this really large variable called the DOM, the Document Object Model. And it basically can be described as a bunch of nodes, and that these nodes have children. So for example, maybe you have a paragraph, and within the paragraph you have a child node that describes a link to another website. So within these nodes you have the content encoded in there, and you also have the style from CSS. And then using JavaScript, if you manipulate this variable, you manipulate the look of a website. So now I'm going to do some live coding so you can see me make mistakes if you want. And I'm basically following along a little template that I put up here. So if you want to navigate to bit.ly/NHA2018_web, NeuroHackademy 2018_web, we're going to do some basic HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And then if you have time, you can ask me if there's any particular thing you want to know. And then I'm, of course, here for the next week and a half. And if you want to go into any more detail, ask me anything you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder. We're going to create a file named index.html, and then we're going to go to a browser tab and navigate to that file. Okay, so with my terminal, I'm going to go to my desktop and make, oh, this is really small, I'm sorry. NeuroHackademy 2018. Okay. And I'm going to make index.html and open Atom to my text editor. Okay. Follow along the template I made. Okay. Oh, someone taught me something cool the other day to make a split screen view. So I'm going to try that. Okay. And then, awesome. Okay. So I saved this file on my desktop in a folder called NHA_2018. So I'm going to navigate by typing file : / and it's kind of filling it out for me. Desktop. So here's a view of my desktop. I'm going to navigate to the NHA_2018 folder and look at index.html, and it's blank. So the basic setup for any HTML file looks like this. You type in HTML/HTML. So these things right here are called tags. This is telling the browser that what you're reading right now is, yeah? Oh, I can, yes. Okay, cool. Within the HTML, we have this section called head, the header, and then we have the place where the main content goes in the body. I'm going to hit save, refresh here. Wow, is this a thing? I'm going to hit inspect. Okay, cool. So this is called DevTools. So, here it is. On Chrome, if you go to View, Developer, Developer Tools, you'll see this window pop up. And from here, we can start inspecting our massive DOM variable. Right now, there's not much in here, but we're going to add a new tag. So within the body, I'm going to add a header. It's going to say, hello world, as you generally do for these sorts of things. So I'm going to hit save and then refresh my page, and we have content, HTML. And if you look, we actually see that our body now has a child node, an H1, and it has some content, hello world, in it. So is everyone following me so far? Cool. Equals what? Oh, I don't really know what that is. Does anyone else know? Fernando, do you know what that is? That the double equals $0. Yeah, I don't know why it put that there. I don't know if it's a Chrome thing. Huh, interesting. Okay, so another sort of tag we can add is a paragraph. And I can say this.
Apparently it's a new, I just hovered.
Oh.
Hover with a $0 with the keyboard. I get a pop-up hint saying use $0 in the console.
Oh, cool.
To this element. So added.
$0.
I've never seen it before.
That is so cool.
You have handy, like automatic variables to grab nodes.
That's really useful. Okay, so just to follow along, in this console, we originally opened up to this elements page where we could interact with our DOM. There's also a tab called console, and this is your JavaScript console. So this is where you can type JavaScript and interact with it. So the $0 is actually a variable name for the element that we just created, and you can actually manipulate this element. And we'll talk about that in a bit, or I can show you now. So if we say $0.0.inner HTML, we can say by world, which is kind of sad, but so you can see we just manipulated this DOM, and it changed the look. So developer tools is a pretty vital tool to be using. For a long time, I didn't really know about this, and I didn't make very much progress. Okay, so we have paragraphs. We also have links. So to do a link, we use this A tag, and then we give it an attribute called href. And this is where you would give your URL. So this is google.com. And then within the tag, you can give some text. So click here to search. Yeah? I will save, refresh, and now we can see we've added a paragraph, and you can click here to go to google.com. Another neat thing about DevTools is you can hit this box with a mouse. I'm going to click that, and you can highlight different elements. So I will inspect this paragraph, for example, and it brings me here. All right, so let me see. After tags, let's talk about CSS. So the next thing we need to pay attention to is the style. You never see web pages that look like this anymore. This is the default way a browser renders things, but I think it's kind of ugly. So what if we wanted to maybe move Hello World a little bit lower and maybe change the font? So in DevTools, we can click on this, and we can start adding attributes. These are style attributes. So I might say the font family is Arial. And now it changed Hello World to Arial. We can also give it a color. Color blue. Oh, that's not a color. Blue. Yeah. We can also move it down a little bit with the margin and padding attributes. So let's say I give it a margin of 20 pixels. Maybe we can also, when you do this margin, you'll notice there's this box, and it highlights the margin that you just added. Another useful tag to pay attention to is called the div. It's kind of invisible, but it's used to group other elements, and it can also be given styles that can change the look of your website. So I'm going to make an empty div here, and when you highlight it, it doesn't have a height. You don't see it at all, but you can give it a height of 50 pixels. You can give it a background color of beige. You can maybe give it a width of 30 pixels, right? And then you can also just not have a tag. You can just start typing text. So here is some text. Okay. And you'll notice that the styles that I just put into this console just disappeared because we need to figure out how to encode it in our HTML. So the way to do CSS within this HTML is to add a style tag. And now we can maybe change the color of our paragraphs to purple. The way we do that is we start with the name of the tag. So in this example, the name is P, because we're looking at paragraphs. We're going to open curly braces, and then we can say the color is purple. I hit save, refresh here. We now have a purple paragraph. So this thing right here is called a selector. Right now, this is selecting a tag called P, but we can also select in different ways. So let's say we had 2 different paragraphs. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to say this is another paragraph. And let's say we wanted our second paragraph to be green. One thing we can do is give it an ID. So if we can say this ID is green para, which means to select an ID, we start with a hashtag and we say the name, so green para, and we'll say color green. I will hit save, refresh. Okay, cool. So normally by default, all paragraphs are colored purple, but the one with an ID of hashtag green para becomes green. Another thing we can do is add, let me add a third paragraph. And now I'm going to remove the ID and I'm going to give it a class. I'm going to call this the red class. And I will make 2 paragraphs here. They're both with the red. It's another red paragraph. Paragraph 2. Okay. So now we have 2 paragraphs. They both have the class red. And in order to select all tags with the class red and give them a style, we start with a dot. So now dot red, color red. Cool. Was I too fast? Is everyone following? I see 1 thumbs up. Yes? It references any element that has the same class name. So by default, every paragraph is P. So this is kind of like the default for the tag. Then you can get a little bit less specific, a little bit more specific with class. And then you can get individually specific with an ID. So class and ID are attributes that we add to our tags that can help us style elements because they're ways to kind of mark tags to be CSS styled. Does that make sense? Okay, cool.
And I guess the specific to less specific.
Yeah, so it's going to, so it'll prioritize the most specific thing, and then it'll go less and less specific. Correct. Okay, let's see what I have next. IDs are the most specific, and ideally you want unique IDs for every tag, because otherwise you might as well use a class. And it can confuse things later on. So another thing that is useful, because this CSS can get really large, is we can create a separate CSS file and then link to it. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it style.css. I will copy everything within the style blocks here. And now to link to it, it's going to be link href equal, is it ref or href? I always forget this. Rel, yeah. Href equals style.css, rel equals style sheet, and the last thing is type. Type equals text/CSS, and the tag. Can I zoom out just so that you can see the whole thing? Oh yeah, I probably can. View. Is it view?
Toggle soft wrap left.
Where? Oh, here?
Toggle soft wrap down.
Thank you. Okay. So now if we save this and we see we're still using the style, it's just now in a different file altogether. And you can have as many style sheets as you want. Okay, I think we're ready to go into JavaScript now. Yeah, okay, ready to go into JavaScript? You can write JavaScript directly in the HTML with a script tag. And the first thing I like to know when I'm learning a new programming language is how to print things. The way you do it in JavaScript is console.log, and then you can give it a string in this example. So now I'll go here, refresh, and now if we look at the console, it's talk to us. It says hello world. Okay. Another thing we can do is when the JavaScript starts getting too big, we probably want to put that in a separate file altogether. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it app.js. Cut this out, put it here, remove the script. Well, actually, I don't need to. I'm going to save. And with script, the attribute name is called src rather than href. And this is app.js. So I'm going to save, refresh. You'll notice it still works. And now the console is telling us that app.js on line 1 has said hello world. OK. All right, so now let's talk JavaScript. OK, so first I want to talk about data types. So to comment, you can do a double slash, or you can do /* / for multi-line comments. So here I'm going to say data types. Well, you have your bools. So in JavaScript, var t equals true, var f equals false. You can have your numbers. Uh, 5.5. This semicolon is completely optional. It's just that a lot of people like it for some weird reason, so I put it there, but it's not like C, it won't break if you don't put the semicolon. We can also have strings. Hello. And we can have, in Python, what would be a list in JavaScript is an array. This array can have numbers, but also you can mix stuff like strings. You can have more arrays here if you want. And there's also objects. And it's kind of like a Python dictionary. You don't necessarily have to put quotes for the key. So you can say something like name, Anisha, last name. Objects can also have functions within them. So we can say, print name is a function. And we'll talk more about functions in a bit. And it'll say maybe my name. Why is the wrapping not working? OK. So, right. So I can console.log my object and call this print name function that I've written into it. OK, so Anisha 0 Keshavan. Why is there a 0 here? Huh. Oh, nice, thanks. Save. Great, so at app.js33, we've taken this object and we've called its print name method, kind of. Cool. All right, next up, if-else statements. So the syntax for, I'm going to declare a variable. And I'm going to say if, and then we have parentheses. A is less than 4, console.log less than 4. Else if, and then again parentheses, A is greater than 5, and A is less than 6. In between, and then else. So in here we have our Boolean statements. Python is quite nice because you can use the word and, but in JavaScript we have this 2 ampersand thing. Or is a double straight line. What is that straight line thing called? Pipe, double pipe, cool, yeah. Great. I will save. Whoa. Oh. Really? It's greater than? Yeah, I'm going to say here if it's greater than equal to 5. It's in between 5 and 6. Great. Is this okay? Am I going too fast? The syntax is, in my opinion, not as pretty as Python, but at least it groups things with these curly braces. So even though there's no restriction on like the 4 spaces thing, it's quite nice if you indent. And in JavaScript world, people like to do 2 spaces. All right, next we have for loops. The syntax for a for loop: for, initialize a variable I, start it off at 0, maybe run it 5 times, and then increment I by 1. For example. And then again, curly braces. Loop iteration, comma, I. Let's do that. All right. So now our for loop is printing different loop iterations. Okay. I think I want to do functions next. I do. Okay. So I showed it a little bit earlier, but the syntax for a function is you type in function, and then you give it a name, sum, for example, parentheses start, and then you can do the arguments. So I'm going to have A and B, curly braces, return statement. So this is similar to Python. Okay. Functions. All right, next up we have classes. So it's kind of weird, I think, coming from Python, making a JavaScript class because it's kind of looks like a function initially. So I'm going to make an animal. It will take in a species and a name and maybe a color. And if we want to save these variables to our as attributes to our class, we use this keyword called this, species, name equals name, this dot color. So this just looks like a normal function with this weird this keyword. But now let's give it a method. So I'm going to say animal.prototype. Oh, wow. Okay, that's nice, Adam. So Adam is telling you, put the class name here, put the prototype, and then give it a method name, and then define a function. So here, my class name is animal. My method name is speak, example. And now we'll say log this dot name says, I'll just say says hello. So now to initialize an instance of this class, I'm going to say my dog is an animal, is a new animal. If you forget that new, it won't work. It's a dog species. Its name is Fido, and it is a brown dog. And now I can tell my dog to speak. Refresh, and Fido says hello. Is everyone following along so far?
What's the prototype?
Yeah, it's a JavaScript thing. I could probably find a better explanation online. Fernando, do you know the prototype thing?
I know very little JavaScript. I think it's basically the object model for JavaScript is quite different from the Python one, and it's not class-based. It's based on this prototype notion, but I don't know enough to say something.
Same. I'll have to Google it. Just know that's what you do. JavaScript seems like more of a functional programming language, and so it feels a little weird using classes. And when I first started writing JavaScript, I really wanted to use classes because I was used to that. And then I got really confused by this initially, and then it was weird. But a lot of libraries are using classes nowadays. So, and when you read code, it's important to know why this new keyword is there, for example. And so usually it means you're creating an instance of a class.
Something else in prototype? Is there animal dot something else?
I think animal might have. There are some other neat things that come with prototypes, but I'm not entirely sure. Have to Google it. When I write JavaScript, by the way, I Google everything, and don't feel bad if you have to do that. The landscape is changing so quickly that I say that I know JavaScript, but I don't really know because it's just moving along so fast. I always feel like obsolete, and that's normal. Okay, what else was I gonna do? We only have like 12. I was gonna only go for an hour because I get hungry by 6. So you can inherit classes, but I'm going to skip that. What I think is important is to actually start interacting with this web page. So I'm going to go back to my HTML. I'm going to delete all the stuff that we did, and I'm going to create a form.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Should the script link be in the body or in the head the way you link to the CSS one?
It should be at the end of the body. If it's in the head, it can actually slow down the loading of your page because it's going to try to load everything in head. But if you put it at the bottom of body, it's asynchronous. So it'll load it as it comes along. And so generally, people like to do it at the end of the body. That's a good question. All right. It could be anywhere, yeah. So, yeah, it can be in the middle of the body too. But the convention is at the end, yeah. So I'm going to create a div just to group similar elements. And now I'm going to use an input tag. And I'm going to give it an ID, its name. And age. And I will copy this, and I'll give it the ID age, and maybe a button to say submit. Okay. So I'm going to save this, refresh here. Now we have ourselves a little form. You can type in your name, your age, 29. And then you can hit this button, submit, and it doesn't really do anything yet. So what we really need to do is link this button to a JavaScript function that runs when we click it. So to do that, we're going to add this event on click, and we'll give it the name of a JavaScript function we have yet to write. So it's going to be called print info, and we'll call it with no arguments. So I'm going to save this, and now in app.js, if it's okay, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to write our function print info. And the first thing print info is going to do is it's going to grab the data that I've inputted into this form. So the way to grab this data is it's actually saved in a spot in the DOM. The way to find it is it's in document. So document is a variable, and it has a method called getElementById. I should make this bigger, no? That looks bad. I'll just type it out here. So if I say document .getElement by ID. And I give it the name of the ID of the field that we want to grab. So let's start with name. And if I take the value attribute, and let's console log that, this, in theory, should say Anisha, right? So I'm going to hit refresh. I'm going to type in my name. Why? There we go. And hit submit, and now it's printed Anisha. So now we have that link. We have the submit button with the onClick attribute pointing to our function print info. And print info is grabbing our big variable document, and it's grabbing the ID name.
Document is the document.
Yeah, so document has all the good stuff.
It's not to be contained, it's the same.
Yeah, it's saved as document. And if you look at what document is, it's actually that same thing that you see at the top of the, oh my God, this is too big. If you look at elements, this is document. Now I'm grabbing it in the console here. Yeah. Okay, so let's save this value as name, var name. Really quick, if you don't put this var here, nothing's going to break. It's just that name now goes to the global scope. So it's always good to put var in front of everything. Similarly, let's define age. Document.getElement by ID. So Adam is nicely helping me because I installed some HTML package. Let's do age.value. And now let's actually print name and age underneath this element. So now that we have this information, let's add something new to the DOM. So the way to do this is we're going to create a new element. Document.create element. And we'll create a paragraph. And now let's give this element some text, some content. Inner HTML. And here this should just be a string. We'll say name is age years old, for example. And now the last thing we have to do is give this element and add it to our document. And we'll add it to our body. So we do document.body.append element. So refresh. This is really finicky. There we go. My name is Anisha. I'm 29 years old. Hit submit. And it says Anisha is 29 years old without a space. So there are cleaner ways to do the string formatting. I'm just concatenating with a plus. Now what if I say, so instead of a P, what if we did a, H1, yeah, great. Save. H1, cool. You'll notice in the paragraph example that the paragraph took on the purple color, and that's because of our style. We can actually change the style with JavaScript as well. So now let's say we wanted this H1 to be orange. Before we append this object to our DOM, let's change the style. So el.style.color orange. Refresh. And now this is orange. Yeah. Yeah. So in DevTools, if you click on this, if you start typing font, it starts to auto-populate. Font family is the key. And here you can put a font name, Tahoma maybe? Cool. A lot of websites have their own their own font, and you can actually import fonts as well. So you just Google how to import the font, and then you would put the font name there. Another thing is that if the computer doesn't have Tahoma, you can say it's like a sans serif. So that just means take whatever sans serif font that's on the machine and use that as a backup. So you can have many backup fonts. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, on document.body, on the code, it doesn't autocomplete append. It autocompletes append child or append element.
Oh yeah, append.
Because a plain append has been deprecated or something?
Probably. They change the standards of these things so much.
Do you know which of append child or append element should be used for that?
I've probably seen append child more frequently.
Child.
Yeah, because you think of these nodes having children, those children, so you can think of parents and children when you think of the DOM. Yeah. But nowadays, people don't manipulate the DOM in this way. We have libraries that abstract all this stuff. So we're coming up to an hour, but I want to quickly go into the idea of what D3 is doing. So D3 is this library for beautiful data visualizations. I'm sure you've all seen on the New York Times these cool interactive visualizations. How do I get out of this? Well, the example I showed with the interactive plots, this was all built with D3. And the way D3, most of its libraries is just for doing this stuff that you see here. It's grabbing elements and it's changing their attributes. So for example, let's make a very simple bar chart. I'm going to make a few divs, and I'm going to give them a class bar. I'm going to make four bars. Within class bar, I'm going to go over to style.css. It's going to have a height of 50 pixels, a background color of steel blue. I will save that. And now within each individual element, I'm going to give it its own width. So here the width is going to equal, I don't know, 100 pixels, 200 pixels, and 20 pixels. So here I'm manipulating the style just directly in the HTML in this example. So I'm going to hit save and refresh, and woo, that didn't work. Let's see, why is that? So we have 4 bars, they're all 50 pixels in width. How did that even happen? Oh, because div. Let's delete this. Oh, I didn't do that. All right, now we have to play around. Okay, now that one worked. So equals, I don't know why that is. Pix, background steel blue. Maybe I need this. Actually, I'm just gonna do style. Maybe that's better. Width equals 100 pixels. Why is that not? I don't know. Anyway, what if we instead manipulated this bar chart with JavaScript? So let's do document.getElement by, instead of ID, we're going to say get elements by class name, I think with capital N. So here we're going to grab all the bars. And so this actually gives us an array of 4 things. Bar. I'm going to save this as my bars. I'm going to say bars.length. And so now I'm saying iterate through each of the bars, starting at 0, going up to n, and incrementing by 1 each time. Grab the specific element, change its width, to a number, let's say I times 100 pixels. Let's see if this works. Ah, yay, we have bars. This is strange. Thanks, JB. JavaScript is really weird, and it doesn't really complain when you start mixing different types. So you can take an integer like 5 and add a string to it, and it doesn't complain. It just does it. There are also some weird things about JavaScript, like there's another type called undefined. Oh, yeah. If we add something to if we add a string to undefined, it like coerces it into a string. Oh, here. Yeah, so the units for width have to be in pixels, or another unit is EM, which is the thing.
It's a classification of a number and a unit.
Yes, unless it's 0, in which case. Huh?
That's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry, it's already past 6, so if you guys want to eat, you want to eat? Oh, okay, cool, me too. Yeah, so if you want to learn more D3 and how to do weird like Tinder apps or make interactive data visualizations, start thinking of project ideas and come find me, and I'm happy to go into more detail, but hopefully this kind of gets you started. If you have been doing HTML but you haven't done it in a while, hopefully this kind of gets you back into the swing of things. Yeah, come find me, we'll hang out. The web is great. I'm done.